What's up guys, Sirius here from Top Tier Scrubs, and today we're going to be talking about my opinions on Dragon Paladin. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll the footage. Hey, what's up guys, Sirius here, and today I want to talk about Dragon Paladin, as the thing up there probably says. So let's go ahead and get right into it, just like with the last opinion video, and I'm just going to say it is clogged with problems. Now, there were two class-specific dragons released with Blackrock Mountain. There was Dragon Consort and Twilight Whelp. Looking at Twilight Whelp, we have a zombie chow without the initial drawback of giving your opponent life, and instead, if you're holding a dragon, it gets 2 health. So instead of having the drawback of needing to give your opponent life, you now need a dragon in your hand. In fact, it's a worse zombie chow if you think about the pre-strategy. The pre-strategy is a late-game strategy. You either fatigue somebody out, or you control the board until they're gone. So if you think about it, this Twilight Whelp goes against everything you have there. It's an early game minion that can control the board, sure, but it relies on you to have a perfect hand, which control usually won't, as is the nature of it. It's not a combo-y deck. But that aside, I wish that Twilight Whelp had gotten into Paladins instead, because I think it would make more sense for Paladins, because they can win in an aggro game, they can win in a rush game, they can win in these scenarios. Instead, we got Dragon Consort. On paper, this is a fantastic card. The next dragon you play costs 2 less, a 5 for a 5/5. Think of it as a mini Emperor Thaurissan who's in tribal mode. For those who didn't play Magic, tribal just means that you're working within a specific type of card. Well, a specific creature type, rather. So mechs are actually a tribal deck, so fun fact of the day. Anyway, you have a mini Emperor Thaurissan who costs 1 less, same stats, and makes the next dragon you play cost 2 less, instead of everything in your hand costing 1 less. This card is, in and of itself, a phenomenal card. It allows you to do things like turn 7 Ysera, which I don't know about Dr. Boom, but Dr. Boom doesn't fight Ysera on his own without backup. And Ysera Awakens is a bomb-ass card to get, regardless of having to rely on RNG to get there. But anyway, it also brings out Nefarian, who's Thought Steal on legs, and he's awesome. It brings out Chromagus early, who's really great with Solemn Vigil combos. Like, there's a lot of things you can do with Dragon Consort, but the problem is the things you can do with Dragon Consort ultimately have no meaning. If we look at Dragon Paladin, let's look at all the dragons you have access in neutral mode. And I don't own all the dragons in the game, so we're going to go into crafting mode to do this. Now let's see here. We have, in the early game, we have Fairy Dragon. That's it. That's why I wish Twilight Whelp was in Paladin. I'm not complaining that we got Solemn Vigil. Solemn Vigil is a great card, but we got Fairy Dragon. After that, you have to go to Twilight Drake, who is completely useless for Paladin because Twilight Drake requires you to have a hand, and Paladin has always had a bit of a problem drawing cards. It's not Priest, it's not Warlock, it's not Mage. It doesn't have really good inherent draw spells. It has one-of draw spells that are good cycle mechanics, don't get me wrong, but that's like saying that Shaman's Manatide Totem is a great draw spell. No, Manatide Totem's an okay draw spell. Hammer of Wrath is an okay draw card. Solemn Vigil is an okay draw card. They are not phenomenally useful, and they are not consistently useful. So Twilight Drake, that's a nil. We can't run it. Azure Drake, this does fix the issue of not having draw cards in the deck. We have a cycle. It's the valuest of value minions. Maybe besides Sludge Belcher. Still really good value. But we have one effect that we can't benefit from. In any situation where we could get a spell damage +3 off Consecration, if we're sitting at turn 5 in Dragon Paladin, we have either lost to Zoo, lost to Aggro, lost to Mech, lost to Face, or we're at the point where there's minions on the field big enough, a la Control Warrior and Ramp Druid, that we will not see 3 damage being impactful at all. Not to mention that without Dragon Consort, that combo right there is going to cost you a whopping 9 mana. Equality does that job way better. And this card could cost 3 off of a Dragon Consort, but 3 for a 4/4 and a draw 1, that's really good, don't get me wrong, but that's not really good when you're staring down Dr. Bam and Ragnaros and Sylvanas. Like, that will not help you in situations where you are clutch and backed up into a corner. A card that does help you when you're clutched and backed up into a corner, though, is Alexstrasza. Battlecry, set a hero's remaining health to 1. We have a good heal mechanic here. We can use this instead of having to drop in an anti-heal bot. This is also good because Paladin already has good self-healing mechanics, so you can get yourself to the late game and play Alexstrasza. But here's the thing, after you do that, what happens? She gets polymorphed, Hex, big game huntered, fireball with spell damage and hit with a mage ability. You lose already because you're fighting Aggro Hunter, and Aggro Hunter doesn't care about the 15 life you have. They can do 15 damage in a single turn with a setup board. That's not very hard. We can go into Maliwin, and the same problem as a Zerdrake. We just don't have the cards to make this card good, so he's out. We have Nozdormu, and if you have Nozdormu, it means you haven't disenchanted it. And if you haven't disenchanted Nozdormu, there's a different legendary you could be enchanting right now who's infinitely better. We have Onyxia, who's, don't get me wrong, she's an awesome card. I personally really like Onyxia. Anytime I draft her in Arena, I feel very good when I play her. But she, again, has the same issue as Alexstrasza. Instead of getting a life reset to pull us into the mid-late game, she gives us a bunch of minions that die to all late-game AoE, and everybody has them. Paladin has Consecrate, Shaman has Lightning Bolt, Mage has half their fucking arsenal, Priest has the Pyromancer combos, Holy Nova, Light Bomb. Light Bomb fucks this whole thing right now. Freaking Hunter has Explosive Trap. Warrior has Brawl, it has Whirlwind and Execute combo, and that kills Onyxia and all of her whelps, and that costs a whopping 2 mana. Like, she isn't the answer we need either. So if we move on, we have 2 more options. We have Deathwing, who's really good, but again, this doesn't solve our inherent issue, and I'll get into why discarding your hand is a bad thing for Deathwing in this sense. We have Ysera, who I think is probably the only option we have. Getting us into the late game, my guess is dropping her for 7 off of a consort, maybe 6 if Tharasan's involved as well. And then dropping either Defender of Argus or Sunfury Protector on her. Defender of Argus in the case of having Emperor Tharasan as part of your combo, and Sunfury Protector in case you didn't. Either way, you can manage to do this and get her out and cause her to protect you in the late game where you're going to be losing. But either way, that's a combo that requires you to set up your hand to do so. And this leads me to one of Paladin's huge issues with trying to run Dragon Tribal. You have to focus on late game cards. Dragon Consort, it's just... Let's see, what else do we have here? What else do we have as our options for dragons? If we don't go into crafting mode, we can look at some Dragon Synergy cards. We have Blackwing Technician, which is a good early game card for us. That's something we can use. I'll get into the late game issues later, but that's a great card. But at best, we have 1 more health than a Spider Tank would have already given us. No synergies past that, and this requires us to have a dragon in our hand. So at best, we have an unreliable Spider Tank, and at worst, we have a vanilla Unbound Elemental. Not that good. Dragonkin Sorcerer has some potential because Paladins have a lot of targeting cards for this card, but in this deck, we're going to have cloggy hands because we're going to be trying to have dragons in our hands to work with our dragon synergies. So if we spare even a single card out of our hand that doesn't have immediate board impact, we will lose the game. Like, the game is very fast right now. There's Freeze Mage, there's Mech Mage, there's Grim Patron Warrior, there's Face Hunter, there's Demon Lock. Like, there's a lot of good, fast, strong decks. The Dragonkin Sorcerer, good as it is, like, stat-wise, I really like this card. Flavor-wise, I like this card, but it cannot hold up to the things that it would have to fight in the metagame right now. Maybe if things slow down, and we could see, like, Buff Paladin come back, I could see Dragonkin Sorcerer being amazing in that, because you have all the ability in the world to make this card shine and shine true, but right now it just isn't the time. Hungry Dragon, I like Hungry Dragon, but again, it has the same problems as Dragonkin Sorcerer right now. We have a very aggro meta right now. By giving our opponent a 1 mana costing creature, we are giving them more tools to kill us and not giving us the tools to fight them. Hungry Dragon kills the minion a little later, but if we take 3 extra health when we're fighting Face Hunter, we're not going to have that 3 extra health when it comes to turn 5 and 6. We're just not going to have it. I know that Jensen is a very, very good advocate for this card. He loves it. He loves what it does. Jensen's a different type of player than I am, though. And he might have seen more success with this than I have. I just know that I have not. I think Pilot of Shredder is just a superior card. Let's see, what else do we have? We have Blackwing, Corruptor, and Dragonid Crusher. Corruptor I like a lot more than Crusher, because Corruptor, if you're holding a dragon, you deal 3 damage. It's a 5/4 for 5. So we have an inconsistent Fire Elemental, which, don't get me wrong, Fire Elemental is a great card, and Blackwing Corruptor is an equally great card. We're going to have our hands clogged with these dragons, and we're going to need an answer. So this card is, in my opinion, a must-include if you're going to be running a Dragon Paladin deck. Corruptor is going to give you the answers you want. It's going to clear something out of the board so that when you drop your dragons, they come into a free board that's not clogged with a bunch of aggro minions that can either kill the dragon or kill you. So I do like that card. That is one card I like. Draconid Crusher is one that I do not like. 6 mana for a 9/9 is amazing. That's very good. That is awesome value. But if we pay 1 more mana, we get 9 damage plus explosions. Dr. Boom. And not to mention, this guy suffers from all the problems Boom has. Big Game Hunter, Polymorph, Hex, like just easy cards that knock him out. All do the same things to both cards. The difference is that Boom is going to give you 2 bots that still have value. I cannot advocate putting this card in a deck when there's other superior cards that still don't shine. I think Volcanic Drake is a much more superior card. This card, it's going to be 6/4. You have no way of buffing it up, but it's going to cost like 2 mana in Paladin. Let's be honest. We have things like, we have the Hero Power, Muster for Battle. We have Quartermaster on top if we want to make sure that we get super value and then drop a Volcanic Drake onto our value field. Like, we have ways to make this card good, and it still doesn't shine. We have Rend, who's awful right now. He's awful right now. And that's it. We don't have the tools to make this deck work. We have no early game dragon cards, so our hand is going to be clogged up, which would be okay since we have to focus on the late game. But let's take a think here. What does Paladin have to get them to the late game? They have control, sure, but you're not going to have that control because your hand's going to be clogged up with dragons. So trying to get yourself to the late game to do the things you want to do is going to be a chore in and of itself. So you're not going to get to that late game. Now, let's assume you get to the late game. Let's assume that you're not playing something that's really aggro, really rush. You're going to fight something like that. And what's going to happen is you're going to play your Dragon Consort, your Emperor Thaurissan, whatever you're going to do. You're going to get your big dragons out on turn 7, turn 6, turn 8. You're going to get them out earlier. But let's look at our options again. The only options we have that have immediate value upon coming out are Ysera and Nefarian. The other one we have is Deathwing. Let's take a look at Deathwing again. I have to go into crafting mode because I don't have one, unfortunately. But if we look at Deathwing again, on paper, 8 mana for a 12/12 that wipes the whole fucking board. That is beautiful. That is awesome, except for one thing. We're going to be spending the game with clogged hand. We're going to be spending the game clogged out of dragons. So by the time we want to reset the board and give ourselves the advantage that we deserve because we worked really hard to get to the late game, survive this far, we're going to drop Deathwing, and we're going to have to lose our whole hand in doing so. And there's no way out of that. We are going to neg when we summon Deathwing. We might prevent ourselves from losing the game immediately, sure. That would be a good thing to happen. But if you survive to turn 8 against aggro, and you drop Deathwing, if they have 1 card in their hand, just 1, they're ahead of you, because they can drop 2 minions on their turn. Theoretically, Deathwing will be able to kill 1, sacrificing the 12 damage that you could have done to the player, and then you will be hit by 1 minion. And that trend will continue up until you're dead, because at this point in the game, you will not have the life to play with to make this card do its job. Ysera I see is a little better, because Ysera is going to give you hand advantage. You're not going to sacrifice what you've already built up, and as an added bonus, if you drop Ysera onto a field with Thaurissan, her card is going to become free. So hey, that's, you know, that's good. She is good for this. And Nefarian, for all the same reasons, Nefarian's going to give you cards to play with. And to be honest, cards are what you need at this point. You need cards to play with at the end of the game. But here's the other problem. When you get there, you either will be almost dead, like I've said before, or you'll be in a situation that your opponent can just push ahead of you again. Now, here's the other issue we have here, is that Paladin inherently does not lend itself to long games. Paladin is notoriously either get a minion out and make it big, or aggro. And both of those decks close out games really quickly. So if we take a class that is built on... if you played Magic before, Paladin is White Weenie. Paladin has the ability to be White Weenie. I can't think of a Yu-Gi-Oh equivalent, actually, but that's okay. Needless to say, it's aggro with small minions, and you can make them more threatening as you go. Paladin's great at doing that, but none of that lends itself to dragons. The only thing that it does that lends itself to dragons in that respect is it drops our Volcanic Drake out earlier. And the problem with Volcanic Drake is, unlike being a 4/6 minion that can help you control the board and get your game state back, it's a 6/4. It can trade with one big minion and then it will die. Whereas if it were a 4/6, this could be a low-cost Chillwind Yeti we could use that could break through sieges of minions and give us an advantage to move into the game. Or, hell, if we're gonna play an aggro paladin anyway, if we make this card a 4/6, we can drop a Defender of Argus down because we know we're gonna have the creatures to do it. We have a token spawn hero power. We can drop a Defender of Argus in the middle of that and a Drake, and all of a sudden we have value extraordinaire. We have really good combos there. 6 mana for a 2/3, turning a 1/1 token into a 2/2 taunt, and having a 5/7 taunter? Yeah, sign me the fuck up. That would be great. But unfortunately, that's not the case. That's not where Volcanic Drake is at, and I really hope it'll get there. I know that we're a few months out from getting another set since BRM just dropped. Was it 4 months? I want to say we had 4 months between Goblins vs. Gnomes and Blackrock Mountain. It was either 4 or 3. I know that most card games work under a 3-month structure, and I don't have the dates in front of me, so I don't have anything on here. But I'm hoping that in the next set we get a little more dragon support, because a few early game dragons, just like maybe something focused on having whelps, as uninspiring as dragon whelps are, at least they have a legendary and Raytheon. He's not old enough yet to not be a whelp, right? I don't think, anyway. He was born in Cataclysm. Near the end, anyway. So, I mean, there's one legendary that can be a whelp. Past that, I can't think of anything else they would do for it, but either way, we need low-cost dragons. We need something to give them a not cloggy hand, and that's the only way I can see Dragon Paladin working, at least the way that the cards that we have right now. So, to recap the issues we have no steady early game, at least not one with any dragon synergies. We have to focus on late-game cards, and these late-game cards are inconsequential at best when in comparison to whatever your opponent's doing at the time. Our late-game options are subpar, as I just said. The Paladin class in and of itself doesn't lend itself to long games. This is not Druid. It has a life reset, and even they don't want to go for a very long game. They want to close out a game quick anyway. We are not Priest with a self-heal mechanic. We're not Warrior with an armor mechanic. We don't have the ability to make ourselves go to turn 32 in the middle of fatigue and be like, it's okay, I have dragons. We're not that class. We don't have that ability. And, you know, the final issue, the final nail in the coffin is a class that just got a decent draw mechanic in it is going to have cloggy hands. I can see Solemn Vigil being great, especially in most aggro variants of Paladin, but I just can't see it fixing the problems that Dragon Paladin has, especially because you have to lose a field to play the card, and in doing so, you're not gonna have a good dragon come out. The only dragon you can draw from your deck and still combo off of that is Volcanic Drake. And, oh, by the way, it's a subpar card to begin with because its stat alignment is reversed from what would make it useful. So, anyway, that's my rant on Dragon Paladin. I've tried making it work. Trump's tried making it work. A lot of people have tried making it function, and it's just okay. It's not non-functional. It's just okay. And I feel like that's the problem, is that if a deck is just okay, it's like Mill Rogue. It'll win a few games, it'll stagnate you on the ladder, you won't drop, but you won't go higher either. So just okay doesn't cut it for a competitive player. It cuts it for a casual player. It's a really cool theme, and it's really nice, and anybody who used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Can go, oh my god, I'm playing Paladin of the White Dragon, and that's a really neat thought, but that's not enough to make it a strong competitive deck. Not with what we have available right now. Maybe somebody will find a golden formula that puts it together. I remember Zoolock wasn't actually very good. It was, like, really dumb and inconsistent, and then somebody was like, oh my god, Doomguard. Doomguard. Why don't we run this? And Doomguard lent itself to closing out Zoolock's games. Zoolock had amazing early game, subpar late game, and that fixed its mid-late game issue. We need something that will fix the early game issue of Dragon Paladin. So, as my project for you guys, if you want to find a way to fix the early game issue in Dragon Paladin while still maintaining good tribal synergy, go on ahead. I know I'm still going to be trying. I'm not going to stop trying. It's still something I want to do. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next week before the next podcast episode airs. I want to know what you guys are going to be doing. Are you guys going to be going into trying some Dragon Paladin combos that haven't been seen on Hearthstone or Reddit yet? Or are you going to be staying away from the class and sticking with what's really good this format, which is, you know, this thing right here. This Grim Patron shit right here. Really, really silliness. So what are you guys going to be doing? Let me know that in the comments. And also, if you like my content, go ahead and like, favorite, and subscribe. And go ahead and check out our podcast, too, if you want any recent Hearthstone news. Got episode 3 out finally, and hey, episode 4 is coming next week. See you guys later, and this is Cirrus from Top Tier Scrubs, signing out.